feel so left out because I don't have an AI slide, but guess what? I have my own clicker. No, but it's really exciting to see so many people here, and I'm really grateful for the time and the effort that you invested into this meetup. And honestly, I'm quite stressed about fulfilling your expectations, so I hope you will like it. And today I want to talk about certain types of objectives. In my point of view, there are multiple types of objectives, but there are objectives that are purely aiming at changing the customer behavior, and then there are objectives that are aiming at changing the perception. By perception, I mean customers' positive emotions such as satisfaction, delight, etc. And I want to share with you my experience with these types of objectives and what worked for them. Let's start by getting you quickly on board on the objective I was working on. Kontent.ai, the company I'm working for, builds a content management system. And very briefly, in content management system you can design or define a content model or structure, and then you write the content itself. And the first part, the modeling part, for certain types of clients can be pretty complex. And decisions made in this stage have a huge impact on the authoring experience later on. That's why we long-term wanted to invest into improving this. And to track progress in this objective, we set two results. One is oriented more towards functional fit and requirements fit. The second one is oriented towards ease of use and usability. Quickly, for a better context, we measure these types of key results using a lightweight human survey directly inside the app, and we measure the results every 6 months. And this objective is kind of a long-term initiative spanning over more than a year. It's really important for us. After the initial measurements, we found out that the requirements fit. You can see the numbers in the top left corner. The requirements fit being approximately 4.6 was underwhelming and poor in our eyes, and the usefulness fit was roughly 5.2, which was okay. So our goal was clear by then, that we wanted to increase the requirements fit from 4.6 out of 7 to 6 out of 7 in a year or a year and a half. You get the point. And I bet we started the same way as probably you start too, by using qualitative feedback and qualitative data. So luckily we have been tracking our customer feedback from different sources like customer support, researches, etc. in product board. So by now or by then we have had a plethora of well-explored, poorly met needs or unmet needs, basically a shit ton of feedback in product board. But what was the problem? That there were like 10 or 15 really high importance and really high confidence opportunities. So we were kind of in a paralysis because there wasn't any clear segmentation for us. For example, if we chose a certain vertical or horizontal, how we can narrow down the opportunities. So we had two choices. Either we could roll the dice and choose something, some opportunity and risk subpar results, or we can add something more to this data. And I bet there are more objectives like this, even in your products. And what defines these types of objectives or problems is that first they tend to be too broad and too generic and too general, so that you can't segment it by persona, customer, horizontal or vertical segment. Then the problems or the opportunities are well explored, there's many of them, and it's not only about the functional needs, it's also about perception. Being perceived as a leader, being perceived on par, etc. So I wanted to dedicate a moment here to hear some of your examples. Let's say one or two. I was interested whether any of you can think of any objectives that would fit this description, where you have a shit ton of really high importance, high confidence opportunities, but can't decide which one will drive the best results. Anyone? Any ideas? Thank you.
Any kind of growth opportunities or growth team opportunities? You have so many things you can try to tweak and try to figure out where the signal comes from. Which one to choose first?
Yeah, that's a pretty broad objective. Anyone else? The second one? I think the group will appreciate it, no pressure. Okay, thank you very much. So, by now, I bet we agree that we need better tools for predicting the customer sentiment other than qualitative research. And luckily, KANO Model is one of the frameworks that can help with that. These are the three important questions that KANO Model can help you answering. I'm going to circle back to them in a moment. Right now, it's not that important. I will need to very quickly onboard you into what KANO Model is, because probably, or perhaps raise your hands, those of you who don't have any clue about what KANO Model is. Okay. I hope you will have at least some clue after this session. But nevertheless, although I don't want to bore you with the definitions of how KANO Model works, I want to share with you my perceptions and how KANO Model influences and improves my life as a product manager. So, very briefly and basically, KANO Model helps you sort opportunities, features, hypotheses into three important categories. Performance, must be, and attractive, and you can find different abbreviations of these labels. And these categories are depicted on the graph on the right, and the graph has two axes, satisfaction and functionality. If you see the dashed vertical line, feature maturity, it represents a single feature in a single state of maturity. By maturity, I mean how complex it is, how well thought through it is, how good the delight and solution fit investment is. And you can see three dots which represent how much satisfaction or dissatisfaction does the feature cause in that given complexity state or investment state. And basically those lines representing these feature categories will help you predict like the function of how much satisfaction you get for your investment. And okay, so this is like the real basics, because how this data can help you improve your prioritization and product strategy. Well, the performance features are really the core of the product strategy, because they tend to be stable. The more you invest into them, the more they yield satisfaction. And typically, as a company, you want to choose a few performance features and you want to pump them up so hard that they create a 10x difference for a product. On the other hand, so they are always safe bets. On the other hand, there must be features, and those are kind of about risk mitigation. So you want to identify those so that you don't have too many of them, because they drag the satisfaction down too much. But what's also important to realize is that product teams tend to overinvest into must-be features, and you need to be really cautious of that, or don't need to, but it's smart. That even small changes in the must-be features can make a huge difference in reducing the dissatisfaction, and you just pronouncing good enough and then move on, make some space for the attractive and must-be features. Then there are the attractive features. Attractive features are the low-hanging fruit or nice surprises in the product, but beware, because typically the attractive features are transient in value. Their value decays over time, after a year or two. So it's smart to gain the short-term benefits, but again, it's not smart to over-invest in them. It's smart to invest something, get a lot of satisfaction, and then it decays over time, but most primarily you should focus on performance features. So, circling back to those 3 questions, how KANO Model can help you as a product manager, it can first help you uncover the satisfaction level, or how the perception changes, not only the purely behavior, and then it helps you balance the priorities in the roadmap. A good roadmap has a nice, healthy core of performance features, then only the top must-be features, must-have features, and then a few sparkles of attractive features on top. And also, it helps you set the right appetite for your product teams, so that they don't over-invest where you don't need them to, or where the business doesn't need them to. So, okay, this data helps my objective, and adding it to the qualitative research might be good. So how to get the data? There is a standard KANO Model survey that you can find on the internet. I'm not going to go into that, you can find that. But I will share some key points that, from my perspective, are important. And like the key point is that the pilot is critical. I did the pilot 2 or 3 times, and 2 times it really saved my ass, because the questions were wrong, the Likert scale was wrong, and the feature were understood differently each time. So pilots are critical, and really don't get creative about the questions. There are formulations about the scale and the questions that are well researched. Stick to them, please. And each feature, I wanted to mention that each feature, so there is a questionnaire, roughly about 5 to 10 features. Each of the features is described ideally using the visual, but you will discover that on the pilot, how well it is perceived. And as a cherry on the top, you can add additional question instead of those 2 questions, called functional and dysfunctional, and you can add an importance question to kind of like help you add additional angle at the perception analysis. So then when you get the data, there are 2 ways you can analyze the data. First is discrete analysis. It's kind of, you use the results for those 2 functional and dysfunctional questions and importance questions, and you get kind of like average feature category. Well, it's quite underwhelming. And for me, a lot better was the continuous analysis. It's a much more sophisticated method to analyze the data and to see also relative comparison, and to see smaller nuances in the data. So the way the continuous analysis works is that bubbles are features or opportunities. The size of the bubble is like the average perceived importance, and there are 2 axes representing the 2 functional and dysfunctional aspects. So the top right corner represents the performance features, the top left corner represents the attractive features, and the bottom right corner represents the must-be features. What's really nice about this is if you look at the yellow and red feature, that both are attractive, but immediately you can see that the red one in your context can be considered more a performance feature, because its absence will cause more frustration, for example, than the purely attractive feature in the yellow circle. So this is kind of like the nuances that will get lost in this average category. This will like allow you to draw your axes wherever you want and see the relative differences. And I would suggest, if you have enough data to do the segmentation, I would say if you have at least 7 to 10 responses from each segment, it's really interesting to see the perception per segment, because for me it yielded results where feature for one segment was performance, and for other segment it was indifferent. The indifferent is like a 4th category, when it's blah if it's missing and blah if it's there. So it's kind of like something we want to avoid. So yeah, so these results really helped shape these